Well, greetings. Welcome to the Dividing Line. It is a Friday. That's unusual, but hey, most of you don't even know what day of the week it is right now. Anyways, it's that after Christmas, before New Year's. What am I supposed to be doing? I'm not sure. Who knows? What day of the week is it? I don't know. Rich just got up and walked into his office and walked back and said, I forgot why I went in there. It's just, yeah, it's just how things are this time of year. And but we have 2020 coming at us, and we don't have time to be muddle-minded with 2020 coming. It is going to be an amazing year. Just a couple of things off the top here. I just took the time just half an hour ago or so to see if Dr. Allen had finished his response on Romans 8. He had actually over a week ago. And so I've downloaded those. So one of the things we'll be trying to get to, hopefully next week or the week after, before G3 anyways, we'll be revisiting Romans 8. And if you're not familiar with what that is, Dr. Allen had posted a blog article on Romans chapter 8. I had responded to it. He had basically said, hey, I've written all this stuff. No one can respond to what I write. I responded to that, everything in his published materials. And so now he's done a 3 blog response, and we'll respond to that because, well, the text says what the text says. And it's always a teachable moment when someone tries to get the text to say something and tries to limit the text. This is the primary thing here. Tries to limit the text's ability to address an issue. And the more synergists seek to restrict, thank you very much, seek to restrict the depth to which the scriptures can address a subject, because it starts, well, let's just put it this way. Remember what happened when we debated Romans 9 with certain people associated with Dr. Allen? Yeah, that's what happens. So, going to be, I hope, useful, but we need to dive into that. Then, and I haven't been able to find the article that he was quoting, but David Wood put up a video, again, for Muslims, with a quotation from Bart Ehrman. I haven't been able to find the article yet. I was on my phone, and I don't know why. I'm not as good with phones as I am with a computer. I think it's just the small print. But he put up an article with a video that quoted from Bart Ehrman about Christmas and about the God of Christmas and so on and so forth. I want to respond to that. I haven't been able to find it yet. But as I was looking for it, I realized that I had let my subscription lapse. Had to get that going again. But basically, I encountered Ehrman addressing the subject of homosexuality starting at the beginning of December as I was searching for this other thing. It happens a lot. You're looking for one thing, run to something else. It ends up being more interesting than what you were looking for. And I was really surprised by Ehrman's comments. Well, I shouldn't have been surprised. I was surprised because it showed so little knowledge of like Bob Gagnon stuff and real scholarly stuff on the subject, and was just unusually surface level for Ehrman. So we're going to be looking at what he has to say, because again, if Bart Ehrman says to a wide audience the New Testament says X, Y, and Z, then there's just going to be not only a bunch of just lay people that are going to go, well, that must be what the New Testament says because Bart Ehrman said it. But the worst part is you've got the professors, like the professor that my daughter ran into. What was his name again? Carter. Yeah, that's right. Dr. Carter. You got the Dr. Carters of the world that just simply repeat what Bart Ehrman says, and they're teaching young people. And so it's not that CNN's going to pick up our response, but we've got to get it out there as best we can. So we'll be responding to Bart Ehrman as well. I want to start off real quick with some biblical thoughts for the coming new year. It is almost upon us. It is. I remember very clearly. It was before we moved to Arizona, so I was less than 10 or 11 years old. Probably even before that. I think it was around 8 or 9 years old when I realized at the end of one summer that as you get older, time passes by faster. I came to a lot of conclusions at a younger age. I was married at 19, engaged at 18, and a lot of Z-Gen go, what? How? Been married for almost 38 years, and they also go, huh? Wow, at that too. But I remember very, very clearly, I remember where I was standing, which is strange. In fact, it's interesting. I was standing within 20 feet of where I was standing the day I realized that when someone insults you, you don't have to run in and tell your mother anymore. It's like, that's going to take time from playing. Who cares? And you just go back to it. So I was staying within 20 feet of that position. 301 St. Mark's Road, Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, if you really want to know. It's behind a bowling alley. It's still there. At least it was there last time I was in Mechanicsburg. Probably still there. They don't really, it's not exactly a center of lots of building going on. But I was staying in the driveway, and I realized that as school was starting, that this summer had gone by much faster than the one before and the one before that. And that's when I extrapolated that out and said, I get the feeling that the older you get, the faster time seems to pass you by. Yeah, that's true. And it's really easy for me to remember when 2019 was, it used to be, young people don't understand this, it used to be that us older folks would have a reminder of the passage of time that young people don't have anymore. And that is, for the first 2 weeks of each year, you'd mess up writing the date on your check when you were writing checks. Because it used to be you wrote checks very frequently. Nobody writes checks anymore. And in fact, young people don't even know how to write out a check. Write a number? What? How? What? Yeah, all that stuff. Anyway, one good EMP and we're all going to be kings. Because we're going to have to, all the young people have to come to us and go, what's this? What? Yeah, how do you dial a phone? Huh? We will rule the world once again. That's exactly right. Anyway, but the years, they do pass by quickly. And I remember that last year, about a year ago, I had made a comment. It's not that this popped up in Facebook, though that feature in Facebook is nice. Especially when pictures from 4 years ago of your grandchildren pop up and you go, oh my goodness, they're growing up so fast. I have one that just turned 10. It's like, but I remember very clearly talking about a particular verse that I wanted to seek to make application of in my life during 2019. Whether I was successful or not will be left up to the Lord. But it comes from the 3rd chapter of James. And so as it is a good and proper divine thing. God ordained it. Part of the wisdom found in God's law for the people of Israel was the observation of times and seasons in the sense of the ordained feasts and things like that were connected with the life of the people of Israel. And certainly it was an agricultural time, and so harvesting of crops and giving thanks and all these other things that have been a part of human history, most human beings don't even think about anymore. If you live in a city, your food comes on a truck. And it always has as far as you can remember. And that has disconnected people greatly from their own history and from the celebrations and the feasts and of harvest and planting and the very idea of being dependent upon God, who would bless the growing of the crops and things like that. Now you just thank the government for whatever, assistance the government provides, and that the government has become God. There's a reason why when you look at a state and it breaks down by color, that the cities are one color and everything else is a different color. There is a reason for this, which we won't get into right now. The point being that when we have celebrations such as Christmas, New Year's, these mark the passage of time. And they force you to think back upon where you were a year ago. Because you think about what you did last Christmas, you think about what you did last New Year's, and you think about the resolutions that you make when the new year comes. And Christians, anyways, should take the good from that and ask the question, where am I now in comparison to last year at this point in time? What have I experienced? And how have I grown? Where do I need to address areas of decay in my spiritual life, so on and so forth? And there was a particular verse in James chapter 3 that I had made comment on and had spent a fair time in January thinking about, and at other times during the year, but especially a year ago. And it comes from James chapter 3. So beginning in verse 13, who is wise and understanding amongst you? Now, when James asks these rhetorical questions, sometimes there's a bit of a, so you claim to be wise? Do you claim to be understanding? It's interesting, the term for understanding, epistemon. So we have epistemology, the study of knowledge, how we know what we know. And so who is Saphos? You're familiar with the term wise. Who is wise and knowing, understanding, smart amongst you? Any of you claim to be wise? Any of you claim to have understanding as normal, flowing through from James chapter 2? Let him show. That's what you had in James 2. Let him show. You make a claim, live in light of the claim. That's the point of James's assertions. Let him show by his good behavior. And that's how you live your life daily in and out. It's not by a single deed once in a while. It is a manner of walking. Let him show by his good behavior his deeds, his works, again flowing out of James chapter 2, in the gentleness of Sophios. So if you want to claim to be Saphos, wise, then the gentleness of wisdom. There is a biblical undertone, especially when you read Proverbs. There is a strength to wisdom. If you are wise, it gives you strength, because the wise rules over the fool. The fool who lacks understanding, the wisdom and understanding, that fool will be ruled over by the one who has wisdom. But wisdom and knowledge can be used to puff up and to damage others. And so it is the gentleness of wisdom. And if the knowledge that you gain causes you to become more hardened in your treatment of others, you're going the wrong direction. It should, because any person who gains great knowledge should recognize how much knowledge they have yet to gain, and hence should recognize that God, who is all wise, has so much more knowledge than any of us could ever possess, that our level of knowledge is so small, our wisdom is so small, we are so dependent upon somebody else for it. We stand upon not only the shoulders of giants who come before us, but we are dependent upon God's revelation to know anything about himself at all. Therefore, there should be a gentleness of wisdom. So the more you learn, the more you know, the more gentle that should make you. Not, and we're going to have the opposites of this given in a moment, not harsh, because it should cause humility for you to, wisdom should create humility. Wisdom, fear the Lord, wisdom, you see all the connections here. And James is clearly drawing very much from the flow of Proverbs. But on the other hand, so here's the danger. But if you have Zelon Pikran, bitter jealousy, and you almost don't have to add the second term, because jealousy always creates bitterness. And jealousy, I've seen, I see this in the academy all the time. You see people who want to have the positions other people have, and they want to have the knowledge other people have. And so they are jealous when one scholar gets published and they don't, or gets published in a better journal and they don't, and it creates bitterness. There is a bitterness that is a necessary result of jealousy, because jealousy fundamentally is a questioning of God's goodness. It is a demanding that God give to you what he has given to others in his grace. You can't demand grace. And so if you have bitter jealousy, and then what? Selfish ambition. Selfish ambition. So if you claim to be wise, you claim to have understanding, but if you join those claims with bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, so this is, it has a place within you. It defines who you are. It is poisoning all of your relationships and your words and your speech and your actions. So if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart, do not become arrogant. Anyone who claims wisdom and understanding, arrogance is the greatest danger. It is something that every single one of us, I don't care who we are, must recognize the danger and the devastation that it brings. Do not be arrogant and lie against the truth. Now, what would be the necessary connection there? If you're a person of wisdom, then you should have great love for the truth. But if you have jealousy, how many times have we heard about people who twisted the truth for their own advancement, who lied against the truth for their own advancement, or only gave a part of the truth for their own advancement? Jealousy and selfish ambition destroys any meaningful application of wisdom and knowledge in mankind, because jealousy and selfish ambition are rebellious attitudes. You're rebelling against God. You're not seeing yourself properly as the creature of God. You're not seeing the vast chasm that exists between the creature and the creator. You're not acknowledging the great wisdom of the creator, your dependence upon his wisdom. And so these are all the opposite attitudes that one is to have in comparison to a godly attitude. And the result will be you will lie against the truth. You may know the truth, but you'll twist it, you'll turn it into something else. And you will lie against the truth. And so this wisdom, this safa, the person who says I'm safas, I'm wise, this wisdom is not that which comes down from above. So there's two different kinds of wisdom. There's that which comes down from above, and there is that which is earthly. It is from below. It is earthly. It is sukake. It is soulish. It's natural. It's of the creature. And it's demonic. There is a spiritual, when the enemy of your soul sees that you have deep within you that root of bitterness, oh, he will just do everything in his power to grow that thing, because it will destroy everything around it. We are warned about the root of bitterness. And it is indeed, this wisdom is not that which comes down from above. It's earthly. It appeals to the sensual. It's soulish, natural, demonic. For where there is jealousy, selfish ambition, strife, division is the term can be. I mean, how can selfish ambition always results in division? Everybody knows that the guy who always wants to get ahead, who's going to step on everybody, you don't want him on your team. He's going to create division because he's not going to want anyone else to get the credit for what he himself does or she does. So you always, in business, wherever it is, you see where jealousy and selfish ambition exist. There is a really interesting term. There is, it's a term that has at its root stasis. You've heard of stasis? The situation is in stasis. There's no change. There is a consistency. There's a harmony. To be in stasis. Well, this is the opposite of that. So it's disorder, tumult, frequently used in the context of rebellion and every evil practice. And so, I think back on Philippians chapter 2 and Paul's providing to the church at Philippi the greatest teaching on how you can have peace in the church. You have peace in the church when you're not looking out for your own things, that's jealousy and strife, but you're looking out for the things of others. Humility of mind. You're acting in humility of mind toward others. When you have maturity in a fellowship, that means you have servants in that fellowship that are not looking for their own self-promotion. They're looking to serve Christ by serving others. That is the church where you're going to have peace and harmony. That's where you're going to have peace and harmony. And so where jealousy and selfish ambition are, that's where you're going to find clamor and disorder and rebellion and every evil practice. So within the church, within your own heart, within the family, within any organization, jealousy, selfish ambition, it comes in slowly. It can just be the thought, he didn't really deserve that. I deserve that. That guy shouldn't have the platform he has. I should have that. And it can be just a quick thought you might dismiss, but if you don't dismiss it with prejudice, what am I even thinking that? God is in charge of all these things. God's sovereign over these things. He gives gifts. He places people where they are. If this person is a fellow believer, I should rejoice in what they have and the opportunities they have to promote the gospel and whatever it might be. And you go on from there. But if you nurse it, if you think upon it, the thought comes back later on, and it comes back later, it's a slow but dangerous process to create that jealousy. That guy shouldn't get the notoriety he does. He shouldn't get to speak at the places he gets. I should have that. Oh, man. There's a lot of jealousy. A lot of jealousy in the church. And that's why there's disorder in every evil thing as well. So James 3:17 was the verse I was talking about. But it's interesting that it's at the end of all these warnings about what results from jealousy and strife and self-centeredness, and a wisdom that is earthly rather than heavenly. But the wisdom from above is first pure. It is pure. And then it is peaceable. And then I'm not going to go through all this because I did last year and I spent a little more time. These terms that are used have interesting possibilities as to their meaning, their lexical meaning, what's called the semantic domain. A semantic domain is the range of meanings for a word. There are some words that have an extremely narrow semantic domain, very technical terms. And then there are words that have massively wide semantic domains that only context can tell you where in that large domain the author is placing that particular term. And these are, especially when you get into, well, gentle, yeah, but reasonable could be easily persuaded. Someone who's always trying to get two sides together, the peacemaker type thing. Full of mercy is fairly straightforward. Full of mercy. I would just ask all of us, when we consider the attitudes that are fostered and produced by social media interaction, do they promote or denigrate mercy? I've read a number of articles recently about how there's all these fake Twitter accounts and stuff, and how the idea is to create division, to divide people, to make people hate one another. And I don't know much about that. I just know that our natural tendency is when we see things online, we just line up. My tendency, your tendency, is to believe what resonates with you, what's consistent with your tribe, with your prejudices, with what you already believe, all that stuff. That's how we are. And as I said, I don't know that we were ever really intended to be overwhelmed with the level of information that is available to us every single day. And so when we are, it's very easy, even if we want to be full of mercy, to instead be full of strife, vindictiveness. And I just wonder how different our interactions would be. I know that in normal human interaction, like where you actually talk to people, something nobody does anymore. This is how everybody looks now when they're sitting at dinner. That's a bad thing. And the amazing thing is they'll actually be texting each other at the same table. How does this work? This is the way things are now. But back in the days when you looked at people, every once in a while, I'll be standing every once in a while. I flew 165,000 miles. Did you know that? 165,000 miles this year was my total. Remember what you had to do at the end of last year. So I flew a lot more this year than I did last year. I'm sorry? Are my arms tired? Yes. Not even a dad joke. That's not even a good dad joke. That's an Uncle Rich joke, and it's just anyway. But I'll be standing at the gate, and once in a while I'll just sort of look around. And yeah, most of the time I'm looking at my phone too, because I'm checking the schedule and I'm getting my flight, because my boarding pass is on my phone, and every you can have that thing ready to go, and as soon as you turn it over to put it on that thing, the screen shuts off. It's just how it works. It's just, so there's stuff you got to do, and you're checking what your ride's going to be when you're getting where you're going, or, if you're delayed, are you going to make your connecting flight? There's lots of stuff. I understand why we're looking at our phones, but sometimes I'll have put it away, I'm ready to go, and I'm just looking around, and everyone's doing that. And I'll find the one other person that isn't looking at a phone, and I'll get their attention. I'll go, especially if they're as old as I am, or at least in my generation, I'm like, remember when we actually used to talk to each other in airports, things like that. And they're like, yeah, you get a conversation going, and somebody else will put their phone down. And you get that type of thing going. So I just wonder if in all of our, when we actually talk to people, and if we'd apply this to when we're putting our fingers on the keyboard, full of mercy. A person, when you can go after an individual, you are assuming you know enough about all of their life, what they're going through, their relationships, everything, to judge them worthy of your attack and condemnation. The fact of the matter is, most of the time, you don't know. That's one of the reasons why disciplinary interactions are supposed to be done in the local church, not by someone 500 miles away, 1,000 miles away, because they don't live with you. They can't get to the bottom of these issues. And so, full of mercy. The wisdom from above is full of mercy, because wisdom can be used as a weapon. But for a Christian, it should always, first and foremost, be full of mercy. It's got to be pure, no jealousy, no strife, no self-promotion. Once that's there, it's no longer the wisdom from above. It should seek to create peace, not division. It should be gentle, not harsh. Reasonable. Boy, we could go a lot with that. Full of mercy and good fruits. Good fruits. If what you do only destroys and doesn't produce good fruits, you might want to think about it. Unwavering. That is, and really the unwavering and without hypocrisy, very, very similar to one another. One might have more of an emphasis of standing firm. The other, without hypocrisy, without putting on that mask and pretending to be something else. These are descriptions of the wisdom that comes down from above. And honestly, if we just had a screen up here, wouldn't it be a great device that for every tweet, you have to submit it to the James 317 device, and it would analyze the tweet and automatically highlight the words that might just violate this one, and this one. And you have to rewrite it. If you had to rewrite every tweet in light of James 317, how many of us would see our tweeting numbers collapse massively over the course of 2020? And 2020, folks, is going to be a challenge. I mean, on one, the part of me goes, yeah, that's just for the United States. No, it's not. I travel enough in primarily Western cultures to realize that the U.S. presidential election in 2020 will be what everyone's talking about. I'm going to be in Brisbane only a matter of weeks before the election this year. Anywhere I go, South Africa, London, Australia, anywhere people speak English, there'll be people, sadly, who will know more about whoever the two candidates are than people in my own country will. I mean, that's just been my experience. I was in New Zealand in 2016, just before the election. And I was stunned by how much people knew. I think it was in Brisbane when I was walking through one of the city squares, and it had big Jumbotron TVs, and there's Hillary and Trump. And so 2020 is, and the politics, and now with the social justice stuff and critical theory stuff infecting everything, it would make a huge difference if we would apply James 3:17 to our social interaction this year. But we are going to be constantly barraged with temptations not to do any of that. To just go at it, because they're coming at me, I'm going to come right back at them. Well, we know what the result will be, one way or the other. So, I spent more time on that than I thought I would. A couple things. The couple things we should be praying about, especially. God's going to do something in China, because when you have the kind of persecution that is taking place there, you know, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, and you could end up with a truly purified, incredible church coming out of China, because Xi Jinping is clearly has God delusions. The state has God delusions. We are God. You are going to do whatever we tell you to do. And so what they're doing to Christians and to Uyghur Muslims, and if it offends you that I mentioned the Uyghur Muslims, then you don't understand what China's doing. You don't understand why this is important. And if you're not praying for them, what's wrong with you? Why do you even call yourself a Christian is what I want to know. You don't want to see Uyghur Muslims saved? You don't care about Uyghur Muslims because they're Muslims? Well, it tells me a lot about where your heart is or where it's not. But have you heard that the Chinese are sending other sort of like ethnic minority Chinese? I mean, because China's huge, and there's all sorts of minorities that it controls, especially in the western portion. Yeah, they're sending these non-Muslim men in to sleep with the Uyghur women who have not been put in prison. Their husbands have. I mean, it just, you're just like, what? I mean, it's a rape thing. That's what's going on. It's horrific. The destruction of families and the trying to re-educate people, and it's all to destroy their commitment to Islam, and they're doing the same thing to Christians. The difference is that the Christian faith much more crosses ethnic boundaries. To be honest with you, it's easier to find the Muslims because they tend to be in one particular ethnic group, and so there's ways they dress that, you know, Christianity's a little bit more of a difficulty for them because it's a little bit harder to identify it, especially when it goes underground. China is setting its totalitarianism absolutely has to establish an ultimate authority in the state. And that's what China's doing. And China recognizes that monotheism produces an allegiance to a higher power that the state can never rival, which is what is fundamental to the United States form of government, which has now been lost and will result in a fundamental change in the United States government before long. It's going to happen because the foundation recognized that rights are not given by states, they're given by God. And therefore, God has the right to judge nations. China says nobody has the right to judge us. Ask the NBA. They found out. They found out no one has the right to judge us. Some assistant coach someplace dares question us, we will use our economic power to punish everybody for that. If you remember that just a few months ago. So it is a horrific human rights abuse, what's happening to the Uyghur Muslims. It's just unbelievable. What's happening to Christians? We just heard that Pastor Wang Yi, who we've talked about for months, there was I don't even know why they bother with this part. why do they even bother with trials? We know what's going to happen. There is no justice. There is no law. Isn't it interesting that even the communists try to pretend that there is some objective standard by which they are justifying themselves? There is none. The state is the ultimate authority. And so my understanding is it's been tried and convicted. No one is shocked at that, but and it was done suddenly and quickly, and these people will simply disappear. And they'll never be seen again. We know what is happening, and we know that martyrs are being made every single day in China and in North Korea. And that's what is just so insane, that there are morons, to use the biblical term, foolish people without understanding, running around our college campuses and universities going, communism's a great thing. It's just never been tried right. Yeah. Okay. This stuff is taking place. And I want to make a connection between the totalitarianism that we see in China. And see, people differentiate between China and North Korea, because you look at North Korea and you go, okay, it's a family, deity, starving people. China, you get more of the idea of, they like their stuff and they're just really materialists, and they've got a semi form of free market going on, and we make a distinction. There isn't a distinction. One's just big and the other's really little. But you need to understand that the Chinese Communist Party and Xi Jinping are just as totalitarian and just as evil and just as focused upon the fulfillment of their own desires as anybody else. And so we look at these things and we recognize the huge challenge that is represented there. Not just, oh Lord, let our world not glow from nuclear weapons. But there is likewise the huge challenge from the fact that the Cold War has moved from where it was in the 50s and 60s onto our own shores. And we lost the Cold War. The wall may have fallen, but it just fell because the other side didn't need it anymore. They already had their shock troops in our universities. And they've already accomplished the invasion they could not have accomplished with military force. And so we are now facing a day where we have to recognize the hatred of God and his law and commitment to Christ as your ultimate authority that is part and parcel of the totalitarian left. And so you see this. If you want to see this, let's look at, let me scroll down to here. This didn't make much news over here, but I know that my British friends were talking about it. My friends in Europe were talking about it. It was a employment issue that came before a tribunal, and the decision was made. Let me just read to you. First of all, you got to realize the seeds of this were sown a long time ago, 15 years ago. The UK government's Gender Recognition Act of 2004 reads as follows. The person's gender becomes for all purposes the acquired gender, so that if the acquired gender is the male gender, the person's sex becomes that of a man, and if it is a female gender, the person's sex becomes that of a woman. This is the definition of a gender recognition certificate. So if you have a GRC, a gender recognition, so in other words, the government gives you a certificate that says you are this gender. Now, it is interesting to ask the question, are they going to come up with 133 245, 587 different GRCs. What's a GRC for a questioning to spirit unisex or whatever? I can't even figure them out. It's just so absurd. It's hard to even talk about it, but that's where we are. But in 2004, the idea was, well, if you're a male, you can become a female by what you do up here. This is where it happens. So that's 2004. So here is paragraph 84 of the tribunal. However, I consider that the claimant's view, so this is a woman who does not believe that men can become women or women can become men. In other words, this is a person who has a consistent worldview with that which built the United Kingdom and Europe and the United States. I consider the claimant's view in its absolutist nature is incompatible with human dignity and fundamental rights of others. So if you believe what everybody believed up until 20 years ago, then what you believe is incompatible with human dignity and fundamental rights of others. She goes so far as to deny the right of a person with a gender recognition certificate. The government has given them a GRC. This is the ultimate authority. See, there was a day when this was the ultimate authority. And a government was recognized to be under the authority of this. This is now mythology. This is now irrelevant. It has been placed outside. And so now all you have left is the government, just like Xi Jinping. But this is in the United Kingdom. She goes so far as to deny the right of a person with a gender recognition certificate to be the sex to which they have transitioned. I do not accept the claimant's contention that the Gender Recognition Act produces a mere legal fiction. It provides a right. A right? Where do rights come from? In Western civilization, it used to come from God. Now it comes from the government. And I would say in the minds of 90% of everyone in the United States under the age of 30, under the age of 40, it comes from the government too. It provides a right based on the assessment of the various interrelated convention rights for a person to transition in certain circumstances and thereafter be treated for all purposes as the being of the sex to which they have transitioned. If Goodwin, a fundamental aspect of the reasoning of the ECHR was that a person who has transitioned should not be forced to identify their gender assigned at birth. Such a person should be entitled to live as a person of the sex to which they have transitioned. That was recognized in the Gender Recognition Act, which states that the change of sex applies for all purposes. Therefore, if a person has transitioned from male to female and has a gender recognition certificate, that person is legally a woman. That is not something that the claimant is entitled to ignore. The government now defines, not God, not the creator. There is no creator any longer. There is no creator. So, the claimant's position is that even if a trans woman has a gender recognition certificate, she cannot honestly describe herself as a woman. Listen to this. That belief is not worthy of respect in a democratic society. It is incompatible with the human rights of others that have been identified and defined how? By the ECHR and put into effect the Gender Recognition Act. This, my friends, is what happens when we no longer say, in God we trust, and God's word defines for us what mankind is. There is nothing to take its place. There is nothing to take its place. That belief, historic Christian belief, that God makes us in a certain way, is not worthy of respect in a democratic society. That was the decision. This was only a matter of weeks ago. Do you see the connection to North Korea, China? Direct connection. Direct connection. It's just a matter of where we are in the process. Where we are in the process. Yeah. Okay, let's switch topics big time here. Yeah, I saw the article, and here's the problem. Everybody knows that Pope Frankie is smoking liberal weed. Okay, I mean liberation theology, South America, Jesuit. This was predictable. This was really predictable. We know that Francis would have simply been burned at the stake by popes only 300 years ago. Would have been burned at the stake. And that says a lot. That says everything that should need to be said about sola scriptura versus sola ecclesia. Sola ecclesia doesn't work. Not just on a pragmatic level, but the fact of the matter is any honest person can look at history and go, wow, there has been a lot of change of these people who claim to possess apostolic tradition. But here you have a situation where you've got two living popes and no person can honestly look at Ratzinger, look at Benedict and Francis and say, yeah, these guys are on the same page. No, they are not. They're not in the same book. They're not in the same continent. But here's the problem. There are lots of folks out there in the quote-unquote Christian web who just love jumping on the most recent thing that Francis says, and they can say whatever they want, and they can spin it any way they want to, because they are never, ever, ever, ever going to be sitting in front of 1,000 people with a sharp Roman Catholic apologist at the other microphone, equal time having to answer questions. So you don't have to worry about what the context of what the Pope said was or anything else. You can just throw it all out there and spin it the way you want to, and you don't have to worry about it. That's not my situation. And so I think it is relevant, the Pope's comments that were just released regarding proselytization and conversion and gospel preaching and things like that. But let's keep a couple things in mind. This is not an official papal pronouncement. This is not the Pope exercising his magisterial authority. And the problem is, almost all of the comments were based upon Google Translate. Now, I don't know if you have ever used Google Translate. Google Translate's really good at some things and it's really bad at others. And, for example, it's really bad at Latin. It'll recognize Latin. It won't translate it very well, but there you go. So what you've got is based upon people's interpreting phrases that come out of Google Translate. Now, do I think that the gist of what he was saying has come through? Yeah, pretty much so. But does that mean that we need to be careful and say, if what the Pope is saying is this, then it might mean this? Yeah, it's, again, what the Pope says to reporters on an airplane is important. When the Bishop of Rome addresses the issue of homosexuality on an airplane and says, who am I to judge? That is important. It does not have the same level of authority as a papal document. And if the Pope comes out and says, I declare, announce, and define as the successor of Peter that homosexuality is a natural and acceptable orientation and behavior, which is about what the German bishops did a few weeks ago, but they don't have the authority to do that. Okay, that says something. But we need to recognize the difference. Okay, fairness demands it. There's just not a lot of people that are overly concerned about fairness anymore. So, just a couple quotes from it. Speaking of having Jewish and Muslim friends, we are all the same, all children of God. Well, that's Frankie. Frankie said that about atheists. Francis does not have a theology that recognizes alienation from God by sin. He really doesn't. I mean, he has to sort of tip his hat to the fact that Rome used to, but I think the man minimally is clearly an inclusivist on the industrial strength side of inclusivism. And if you don't know what inclusivism is, an inclusivist fundamentally, and there's all sorts of different takes on it, but an inclusivist fundamentally believes that God will include in his grace anyone who responds in any positive fashion toward a God concept. In other words, you don't need to know about Jesus. A Muslim's faith in Islam, they may not know who the real Jesus is, but they're still having faith in God. That'll be accepted. Buddhist faith toward whatever, that'll be accepted. So an inclusivist would say that any positive religious behavior, and so an atheist that has his kids baptized, the inclusivist says, going to heaven. And that's what Francis said when the young boy asked about his daddy. Well, he had his children baptized, therefore, clearly going to heaven. So minimally, he's an inclusivist. And obviously, an industrial strength inclusivist and a universalist who believes everyone's going to be saved. There might be a period of purgation, or whatever, but everyone's eventually going to be saved. No, it's going to be no punishment, no separation from God. The gap between the two is not that big. It's not that huge. And so I think he's probably a universalist, but minimally an industrial strength inclusivist. He's as much as said it. Has he placed that in a dogmatic teaching? No. But is the man himself constantly making comments that indicate that is his personal belief? Yeah. Now, the old-style Roman Catholic apologists say, but he'll never teach it as Pope. So you can't go to what the Pope is saying. You can't go to the Pope's commentaries on what's going on in the world, anything else. You can't trust any of that. It's only if he says, I declare, announce, and proclaim. That really makes infallibility completely worthless. And you know it. And you know it. So anyways, we are all the same, all children of God. He plainly does believe that. It didn't occur to me, and it doesn't have to be like saying to a boy or a girl, you are Jewish, you are Muslim, come be converted. Come be converted. We are not in the times of the Crusades. And he talks about lining Muslims up and having a priest and a baptismal, which obviously isn't exactly a baptismal in the biblical sense, but that's another issue. And a soldier. And this is the time of the Crusades. That type of thing actually happened. This is terrible. That's not where we are today. So that's part of the idea of conversion in his mind, is forced conversion. In front of an unbeliever, the last thing I have to do is try to convince him. Never. Now that's where most people are going, so what were the apostles up to? What was the purpose that they had in going into the marketplace and engaging in debate and that type of thing? I don't know. But listen, never bring the gospel by proselytizing. Now, what does that mean? Well, one thing we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that it means is it's not what happened in the Crusades on either side. So you've got that, but that's not really happening. Okay, in some Muslim contexts, you might make the argument, but that's not really happening. So he's reacting to something modern. And so a lot of people have just automatically assumed that his use of the term proselytization is the same as our use of the term proselytization. that we're saying the exact same things. And I think that's pushing it a little bit. You might want to try at least to allow him to define his perspective on it some and interpret it in light of his. If someone says they're a disciple of Jesus and comes to you with proselytism, they are not a disciple of Jesus. The church does not grow by proselytism. But he does also say toward the end, proselytism is not done. The church does not grow by proselytism. Pope Benedict had said it. It grows by attraction, by testimony. Football teams proselytize. This can be done. Political parties can be done there. But with faith, there is no proselytism. And if someone says to me, but why? Read the gospel. This is my faith, but without pressure. So, obviously, the Pope does not have a biblical view of man, does not have a biblical view of the gospel. He is far left, but I do wonder what it was like. I do wonder what it was like. I don't remember when this came out. Let me see. Updated December 19th. So what was it like in the offices of Catholic Answers on the morning of December 20th? You can just see everybody coming in around the conference table, looking at each other. And so who was it? Was it Tim Staples? Who was it that spoke up first? All right, guys, what are we going to do now? Because what we were based upon, the Pope just said, shouldn't be doing. So, how are we going to handle this one? How are we going to spin this baby? Well, I'm sure the Google Translate element was part of it. I haven't listened to Catholic Answers in a while. But wow, it is wow, a rough day. Rough day to be a Roman Catholic apologist. There's just no two ways about it. And it's yeah, there you go. Well, there's a bunch of stuff. We can't go into 2020 with our eyes closed. It would be nice to find a deserted island someplace, and every once in a while it's good to get away, I suppose. But the fact is, much of what our world is talking about leads directly to a discussion of the gospel. The Lordship of Christ extends to everything. And so everything that will be discussed in the upcoming elections, in light of the elections in the UK, that was a big one. And by the way, it was very refreshing to hear Boris Johnson talking about the persecution of Christians around the world in his Christmas message. That will take a bone everywhere where we can get it. That was very much appreciative. And I listened to the Queen's Christmas message. There's still a few connections to the past. It's sort of nice to recognize once in a while. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, check it out. But it's going to be a challenging time. And so we'll have a lot to talk about. So starting off, yes. Oh, yeah, that's right. And now, a public service announcement from the man behind the window.
I have a few housekeeping matters to talk about. If you are a regular donor or a donor at all to our ministry, first of all, we thank you and we appreciate that very much. The part of our process is that I send emails out regularly to you, letting you know, basically a donation receipt. If, folks, you are a donor to this ministry and you're not receiving that email, then I don't have your email address. And so as year end comes up quickly, I need to get your address, and please email me at rpierce, Pierce, oh boy, yeah, I know, I'm daring, @aomin.org. So rpierce, Pierce, @aomin.org. Let me know your name, your address, and your email address so that I can get our records up to date, make sure that we have the correct mailing addresses and all that stuff so that we can get the receipts out quickly. I do have a lag. A lot of churches will get those receipts out like the first Sunday right after the first of the year. We have mail still coming in, and we have to credit donations through the snail mail based on the date stamp on the envelope. So I have that delayed by about a week, but I'm going to get these things out as fast as possible. Please send me your email addresses, and that's it from here.
All right. Yeah, definitely extremely thankful for everyone who allows us to do the things we're doing. We've got some amazing things coming up. I guess I should mention, who knows? Maybe some wives gave to their husbands or husbands gave to their wives a certain trip coming up in late September of 2020 where we still have room. If you want to join us in going to starting in Rome and visiting Athens and Ephesus on our way to and from. Those are split up, by the way, as far as I can tell. I forget which one comes first, but those are split up by the period of time that we will be spending in Israel. On a cruise ship, you dock, and then you take buses, and you go to locations, and you come back, and you stay the night on the cruise ship. Sometimes the ship stays there. Sometimes it goes to another port. That allows you, a little closer access. One of the things about Israel, like I said, is it's very small. And so you can get on a bus and be pretty much anywhere you need to be in a very short period of time. It is astonishing. It really, really is. What's really exciting about this trip, and you can get all the information at aomin.org, what's really exciting about it is that you get on the boat, you unpack, and then you pack back up when you get off the boat. Any other way of doing it means packing, unpacking, packing, unpacking. And I don't know about you, I get really tired of that. That's a pain. But this way, and I sleep so well on a boat. I don't know why it is. You just go out and you get deep sleep like you just don't get it. I think it's just the constant of the, I don't know what it is, but anyways, I sleep well on a boat. Anyways, that's going to be a trip of a lifetime. It's before the election, so the world probably will not end. It's a month before Armageddon hits. So we probably will visit Armageddon, but we'll be out in time before whatever eschatology is. we'll be out the way before that. What? Oh, I thought you wanted to add something to.
No, I was just waiting for you to finish that thought. I was wondering, what do you want to do about Monday and Tuesday?
Oh, well, anyways, so information about the trip is on the website, in the banner ads there, and I don't know what on the new website where that's going to be, but I'm sure it'll be even easier to find because everything will be wonderful and beautiful once the new website is put up. But please be thinking about that. We don't want anybody left behind. We won't be talking about that level of eschatology. But anyways, we don't want anybody left behind. That's coming up in late September, October, and it's going to be a great time together. So keep that in mind. I was thinking Tuesday, if possible. I know it's New Year's Eve, but just do another program and. Because, it's New Year's Eve. Okay, fine. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yep. So we'll do another program then, and then afterwards, and because we've got a lot to get to, a lot of developments all the time, and it's good to be on top of them. Thank you for listening to the program today. Like we just said, we'll see you next week. God bless.